The bright side of addiction is recovery. And recovery is as recovery does. And in this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast, we're going to meet two life travelers on the road to happy destiny. Now, we took our podcast down to San Antonio, Texas, for the 47th annual conference of TAP. That's the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals. And our visit was sponsored by the good folks at Summer Sky Treatment Center, where patients are treated with confidentiality and dignity. It's in Stephenville, Texas, just outside of Fort Worth. You can find them online at summersky.us. We will meet two amazing people in long-term recovery. Now, the first is a woman who has 39 years of everyday recovery, putting them together one day at a time. She had her first drink when she was, wait for it, 2 weeks old. It was given to her by her alcoholic grandfather.
He had a beer and he thought it would be good for me to help quiet me, I guess. He wanted to shut me up or something. I never got to talk to him about that. He was an alcoholic. He always had a highball or something in his hand after noon, from noon on. He never drank before noon.
Her story is nothing short of higher power driven. Then we'll meet a friend of Julie's named Jimmy. Now, he was a hard-drinking Texan who nearly died from alcohol-induced convulsions that left him paralyzed. He recovered physically, recovered emotionally, and he recovered spiritually.
Just a little bit of hope. If you got a little bit of hope in you that you can do this, you can. Yes, it's a hard journey. My journey wasn't easy, and we complicate it, because we know too much. We think we know too much.
He is now retired and has celebrated 28 years of long-term recovery. Both stories are a beginning from an end. And we'll have some inspirational words at the end of the podcast from actress Julie Harris regarding courage. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast. Following 15 years of nightly broadcasting on iHeartRadio in Seattle, we have now updated to a national podcast. Now, what does this mean? Well, it's available now to anyone at any time, featuring interviews with clinicians, authors, recovering celebrities, and everyday people in long-term recovery, plus vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends. We invite you to enjoy it and to share it with your friends as well, because recovery is as recovery does. Now, we'd love to hear from you, and you can drop us a note at recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Let us know your thoughts about our podcast, and perhaps you have a subject or a guest that you would like to suggest. Again, the email address recoverycoasttocoast, all spelled out, at comcast.net. Recovery Coast to Coast is supported by Sundown M Ranch, one of the oldest and most successful treatment programs in America. They have successfully treated over 200,000 adults, adolescents, and families for the past 50-plus years. It's where recovery becomes reality. Now, if you're not familiar with Sundown, you should be. There may come a time when you or a family member, or perhaps a close friend, is in need of treatment for alcohol or other drug addiction. Someone may ask you, where's a good place to go for addiction treatment? Well, Sundown is a nonprofit organization, so it is one of the most affordable treatment programs around. And they work closely with most major insurance providers. And they can also assist with financing if need be. Their staff is incredibly compassionate and very highly trained. They can gently walk you through the process of accessing treatment. Many of their staff successfully went through treatment themselves at Sundown. And of course, it is absolutely confidential. I invite you to check out the treatment center, which sits on 30 acres at the mouth of the Yakima River Canyon. There are some great photos on their website, sundown.org. Sundown gives folks the tools necessary for a life, a new and exciting life, without alcohol or other drugs. Let me be clear. This is not a cure for addiction. Spoiler alert. Addiction cannot be cured in the traditional sense, but it can be successfully managed. It can be successfully treated, much like other chronic diseases such as diabetes or COPD or arthritis, asthma, and many other chronic diseases. Treatment at Sundown puts individuals on the road to recovery. It offers continuing care support and gives each person the tools needed for long-term recovery. And when people recover from addiction, they become weller than well. If you have any questions, you can contact them at info@sundown.org or through their website, Instagram account, or Facebook page. And if you want to talk to one of their amazing staff, the toll-free number 1-800-326-7444. I recently had the privilege of emceeing the 47th annual conference of TAP. That's the Texas Association of Addiction Treatment Professionals, down in San Antonio, Texas. Beautiful location, where I had the opportunity to speak with a number of fascinating individuals who were overflowing with gratitude and grace, men and women in long-term recovery. Now, our first guest in this podcast is Julie Lloyd Atkinson. Welcome back to Recovery Coast to Coast. Nice to have you with us. We are taking you down here to San Antonio, Texas, and the 47th Annual TAP Conference. And I have really been blessed to be able to be a part of this for the last 9 or 10 years. And it's great to see old friends when I come down here, as well as meet new friends. And one of the big smiles that I always like looking at is from Julie Atkinson, Julie Lloyd Atkinson. She is a big part of this conference. She's one of the key volunteers. And selfishly speaking, she also is the person who picks me up at the airport and takes me back to the airport. So I just love seeing her and seeing that brand new yellow Jeep that she picked me up in. Julie has been in the field for a long time, and she's been sober a long time. Been sober 39 years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you got sober at 17?
Yes, sir.
Forget the sir crap. Tell me about your teenage years, 17 and before. When did you first start drinking?
My grandfather filled up my bottle with beer when I was a couple of weeks old, so that kind of started it. And
You started drinking at 2 weeks?
apparently, my mom found it, so I didn't get to drink.
What was his reasoning?
He had a beer, and he thought it would be good for me to help quiet me, I guess. He wanted to shut me up or something. I never got to talk to him about that. He was an alcoholic. He always had a highball or something in his hand after noon, from noon on. He never drank before noon. But when my mom passed away when I was 13, well, I drank every chance I got. If they were she had a party and they were making daiquiris, it was a little bit of rum for the daiquiri, a little bit of rum for me. I just took to alcohol. And I was a binge drinker. So I could drink one day and drink till either there was nothing left to drink or I'd pass out. And then I could go for months, even a year without drinking, but then I'd go on a binge again. And
So once you started drinking, you were off to the races.
yes, I was off to the races.
Did you get in trouble?
I never got in trouble for it, really. I mean, my brother tried to turn me in once, but to get the focus off of him. And my parents just kind of put me on restriction, but there was no way to keep me from doing it. I mean, I'd drink if I'd go babysit and they had a bar, I'd be stealing drinks from the bar. I would steal drinks from my parents' bar, and I would just drink whenever I could. And so for the longest time, it wasn't like a whole bottle, but my aunt came to stay with us when we moved to San Antonio. My mom passed away when I was 13. We came back from Okinawa, Japan, where we'd been stationed for 5 years. My dad's civil service, but we got to go. And she passed away from cancer, breast cancer. And when we moved to San Antonio, it was really difficult because I was new, didn't know anybody, and so that really set me off on a binge. And my aunt that would come stay with us, she was a drinker. So I would drive her out to get a bottle of wine, or she did MD 2020, which was kind of strange for an old lady.
Wow.
Yeah, so she would get that, and she would drink till she passed out, kind of, and then I would take over. She'd want me to drink with her, and it kind of helped. My dad got remarried in 1982, and he got remarried in March of 1982, and I decided to graduate from high school a year early and go to college. And my first week up there was sorority rush before school started, and I went up there. Remember going to one of the rushes, and then I met some friends that I'd known from San Antonio. We went out drinking Monday night, and the next thing I knew, it was Thursday, and I came to in my dorm room talking to my new best friend, who I don't remember ever
Was
meeting.
that the first time you had a blackout?
No, I'd have several blackouts.
Wow.
Yeah. I even had one where I passed out and got sick at a friend's house because they gave me, can't remember what it was. It's one of those real strong ones. And if you're not supposed to take a deep breath afterwards, but I did. And so I passed out and came to in the bathroom, and they called my dad to come pick me up. So that was one of the first times he knew that I was drinking.
So that last blackout, what happened?
I came to in my dorm room, and the girl that was there happened to be involved in Palmer drug abuse program in Corpus, and we met in San Marcos, and they knew of a party in Austin, and they asked me if I would want to go to it, and I was like, I can party sober, so I knew how to do that because I would take friends to get sober. They had a problem, so I had to send them to places, and
It was them, not
yeah,
you.
they had a problem because they couldn't ever stop, and so I sent them to the program, but I never went myself because I didn't think I had a problem. After that blackout, I kind of realized I did. So I went to the party with them in Austin. It was a Palmer drug abuse party, and so it was a sober party. Came back from that, drank the rest of the beer that was in my refrigerator in my dorm, which I was still too young to have, but it was there, and decided to start going to the meetings. I still go to 12-step meetings now, but decided to do that and luckily have been sober ever since. There's been lots of times.
Tell me about that first meeting, Julie.
The first meeting I went to in Austin, because there weren't that many meetings in San Marcos, so we drove up to Austin for a meeting, and they gave me a newcomers meeting. And the guy's name was Jess, and I'm still friends with him today. He's not sober anymore, but I am. And he took me in and talked to me about his experience and asked me if I thought I needed that. And from what he was saying, I was like, I at least want to check it out. Wanted to see what it was about. And so we started going to meetings in Austin, San Antonio, and San Marcos. There's a group of us, and we would just go back and forth. It worked out really well. There's been times when I've had a drink in front of me, I've wanted to drink, and like I was working for a hotel and somebody came up, I had the drink right in front of me because I was the concierge for the VIP floor. So I would give them the nightcaps and stuff. I had honor bar I was in charge of. It's great for a recovering alcoholic.
Oh my!
Yeah.
How long sober were you at that point?
Let's see, that was 86. I wasn't very sober. So no, I was about 1 or 2 years sober.
Wow, talk about a slippery place.
Yeah, I even had drinks in front of me, and one guy came up. He checked in on the day shift, and I was on the night shift, and he came up telling me he was going to an AA meeting to celebrate 5 years in recovery, and so that drink went right down the drain.
Wow.
Another time I had it there and got intervened, and somebody called me and was talking about wanting to slip, and so that drink went down the drain. So I've been lucky that my higher powers intervened on me many times.
It's there's no such thing as coincidence. It's God incidence.
Yes, most
It's
definitely.
God incidence.
Most definitely.
What was that first year or two like for you in recovery? Because you were a binge drinker, so you could go for periods of time without drinking.
Yeah, so I didn't really get into the steps as much. I didn't work all 12 steps. I only had one option as a sponsor. She was the only female in the group that had more sobriety at the time, and so I really wasn't into it. I was basically on a dry drunk.
Right.
And after 2 years, it was like, something's got to change. We had fun. I had a lot of fun, but I still knew something wasn't quite right, and I realized what it was, and I was about 2.5 years sober, and we had a party to where those of us who had been putting off doing our fourth step, our inventory, we had a party together. We had drinks, sodas and coffee and snacks and stuff, and we would sit down and start writing. We each had a room that we were assigned to, and we started writing our inventories together.
A fourth-step party.
It was a fourth-step party. And I've even suggested that to some of my sponsorees when they've been stuck and hadn't been able to do it, and it really motivated all of us to get it done. There was about 5 of us.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So there came a moment of clarity at some point.
The biggest moment of clarity was when I had It was in 1980. I'd started working for Palmer Drug Abuse Program in 1985, and towards the middle of 1985, I was going to a counselor to get some of the stuff out, like the death of my mom and things like that, get a little bit more intense stuff.
Hmm.
And I came to a point where I was either going to, it got so deep that I was either going to turn left and go to the counselor and stay sober, or I was going to turn right and go to the bar and get drunk. And I just said, okay, God, you're in charge.
And at what point in your sobriety was that?
I was almost 4 years sober.
Okay.
And so I just told him, I said, okay, you're in charge. And I literally closed my eyes and turned left. So I ended up going to the counselor. God had to have been driving because there was no way I could have turned left with my eyes closed. But, I did left turn happen. And there's only been one other incident where I came that close to drinking again. And that was when I had been in we'd gone to a party with younger kids, taken them out, and we had a bonfire we were going to do. And the bonfire, there was only staff members, only adults were out there to light the fire, and it was huge. It was a whole guy had taken his back 40 and plowed it in to make a big, huge bonfire. It would have actually filled this room. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when we went to light it, they didn't have any jet fuel or airline fuel, so they used gasoline. And the guy spilled a little bit, so it went out. And when we finally got it lit, it exploded. And 3 of us were caught in the fire. God was watching us because our hair did not burn, our arms did not burn. We were all wearing short sleeves. We all had long hair. I had changed shoes. I was wearing plastic shoes, and I changed into leather shoes and taken off the little nylons that I usually wore with them. So I was the only person that got injured. I had 2nd and 3rd degree burns on both of my feet, and I was walking. I did not spill my coffee. I gave my coffee to somebody else, and then I collapsed, and they took me to the emergency room.
Oh my goodness, what
But
a
I
story.
I was grateful because we kept the kids away. And if somebody had to get hurt, I would rather be me than the kids. And God was watching that too, because that was in November of '86. And by December, I was out of most of the bandages. And remember, this is like 3rd degree burns on your feet, and your feet heal the least out of anything. But I was out of the bandages and up walking around by December. So God healed me quickly. I had one incident where the pain was so strong that I was like, okay, God, if I get off of this couch, I'm going to go and take all of my pain meds. It was that bad. He didn't let me get off the couch.
Wow.
So I truly believe that God intervenes when I need him. He knocks gently once or twice, and then our deal is if I don't answer, he gets to hit me over the head with a 2x4.
What does recovery mean to you today?
Recovery means a positive lifestyle. Instead of always looking at the negative, I get to look at the positive. When I walk outside, I'm a real nature buff, and I'm a crazy cat lady. So when I walk outside, I look at things and I notice things that other people don't notice. It's one of my contacts with my higher power, and being able to do that keeps me balanced. I have a motive that I use that is actually my company's name, my individual company. It's Breathe, Balance, and Boundaries. And that's my motto for my recovery too, is I have to breathe. When I'm getting stressed, I breathe. If I'm getting angry, I breathe. That's my drug of choice now, is breath. And the boundaries, the positive boundaries. I have my space and I let people in, but there's that boundary too. And the balance. I have to have the balance. I have positive people in my life. I have some people that are kind of negative, and I try to spend more time with the positive people. And I'm able to, if, I do help take care of my parents, so if it's getting really bad or my stepmother's going in one of her moods, I say, okay, I'm going home now, and you're ready, we can talk again, instead of staying and putting up with it or fighting with her. And that recovery's given me that.
What a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift.
Yeah. It's just kept me going. I stay involved in things like this because of that.
Yeah. And you can't keep it unless you give it away, and you've been giving it away for a long time.
Yeah, and that's where I had to learn the balance on that too. And I try to help teach people. I've been practicum supervisor and LCDC teacher, and I try to teach them having the balance. They have to take care of their own recovery. I believe in 1A, 1B, 1C, and then everything else comes after that. 1A is God, 1B is recovery, 1C is me. Everything else comes after that.
Outstanding. Thank you, Julie, for that story.
Thank you.
I'm Neil Scott, Recovery Coast to Coast. We'll continue on Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast, with another gratitude-driven story of recovery from Jimmy Ramos, who suffered paralysis as a result of his alcoholism. And we will do that in just 30 seconds.
Alcohol is running your life. You want help, but can't take time away from work to get it. Where do you turn? Contact Sundown M Ranch. Sundown M Ranch outpatient programs have helped thousands recover from addiction without losing time on the job. Nationally recognized for innovative, effective, and affordable treatment programs, Sundown M Ranch will help you put your life back on track. Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
We are back with our second person in long-term recovery on Recovery Coast to Coast, a guy that I sat down with at the TAP conference, Texas Association of Addiction Professionals, down in San Antonio, Texas. His name is Jimmy Ramos. Welcome back once again to the TAP conference down here in San Antonio, Texas. A great conference. We come down here every year. Our visit made possible by the good folks out at Summer Sky outside of Fort Worth, Texas. Summer Sky is one of the great treatment programs in the state of Texas. Jimmy Ramos is nice enough to stop by and talk a little bit about his story, his recovery, what he's doing now. He's a fairly new guy, new in the sense that he's been at Cicada only for about 4 months, which is the San Antonio
Counseling of Alcohol and Drug Awareness Program.
And he helped me out right there. It's good. Cicada.org. Jimmy, you just came out of retirement.
Yes.
And before that, you were about 20 years in the profession.
Correct.
Of counseling. I saw you talking to Julie and sharing some jokes back and forth, but it wasn't a joke for you early on. Tell me about what brought you into the rooms, into recovery way back 28 years ago.
Thank you. Yes, I grew up here in San Antonio, on the west side of San Antonio, thinking drinking and messing around was normal.
Drinking, and messing around.
The big book says, we drink like normal people. That was my normal people. Everybody drank every Friday at my dad's house, got together, and around midnight they got the guitar and the accordion and started playing and singing. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, got into a couple of fist fights and made up about it the next day. Man, I couldn't wait to be part of that.
Wow.
Man, I just couldn't wait to be part of that little clique. So at the age of 13, I went ahead out there and had my first couple of drinks. And next morning, my dad found out, and he said, "What, you think you're a man nowadays?" I'm like, "Well, just when I was some friends." He goes, "Well, get dressed." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Just get dressed." So he got me dressed, took me to his local bar where he hangs out. He told all his friends, "This is my son. He got drunk last night." And like in an AA meeting, everybody clapped for me. Good job.
13 years old.
Yes, So he says, "You want a beer?" I'm like, "Well, sure." So my dad bought me a beer. He said, "Sit down." He said, "Son, there's nothing wrong with you drinking. You work hard for your money, and there's nothing wrong with you drinking. As long as you can support your habit. Once you can't support your habit, then it's time for you to quit." She never told me that. I took off from the age of 13 to the age of 38, and I only drank one way, and that was to get drunk.
All the way.
Every single
one
time.
One way, all the way.
One way, all the way.
Yeah.
I was never no, social drinker. I went to get drunk every day. So I did that, and somewhere in between, I learned how to DJ. I became a DJ here in San Antonio, and then I got hooked up with some of the local bands and some of the bigger bands in San Antonio. I played for Selena, and
did you really?
Yeah, I played for Emilio and some other groups here in town, all over. I joined their little association and started going all over Texas with them. Houston, Dallas, Waco, and DJing in between their gigs.
There was no drinking involved there, right?
There was a little bit. There was a lot of drinking and some other stuff that came around with it. That white powder just did it for the smell.
Yeah.
But it was a wild life. It was a real rock and roll life.
Until it wasn't.
Until it started taking over. And then eventually in the early 90s, it was time for me to get away. So I left in 1990, and then in 93, I finally ended up in a detox center here at San Antonio. Long story short, I was paralyzed from my waist down, from having 6 grand mal seizures the night before at the University Hospital. So I wake up paralyzed, not wondering what's going on. So the doctor comes in. I said, "What happened?" He said, "You had some grand mal seizures, which threw your body into convulsions." He goes, and I said, "Well, am I going to walk?" He goes, "Yeah, you'll walk again." He goes, "But I got to tell you one thing right now." He goes, "You'll never run again." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You've done too much damage to the nerves and your muscles and your calves and your legs that you'll probably never run again." I go, "I love sports. I'm a basketball player, a softball player." He goes, "Might as well give it up." So I left the treatment center and went over to the Winners Club where I met Julie. She was there my first or 2 days.
The Winners Club.
The Winners
God,
Club.
I love that.
So I was able to be there for my first year. I hated it. I hated the people of AA because they were all so happy and everything was so great for them. And I'm over here, can't even barely walk, and these people are talking how good their life was. And so it took about a year before I got my moment of clarity, and I realized that, since the age of 13, the age of 35, I could never drink, one beer.
Did people along the way say, "Hey, Jimmy, you got to do something about your drinking, man. You're over the top"?
Oh, of course, when your own buddies won't hang out with you anymore, that's a problem. So you sort at the people, you look for the people that just drink just like you. And I did, and I found the people that drank just like me, so I hung out with them. So it wasn't too bad because, we're all the same drinkers.
How'd you wind up in detox?
And I ended up having those grand module seizures the night before on July 19th of 1993. It was a girlfriend's birthday, and I asked her, "What do you want for your birthday?" She goes, "You're a real nice man. You take care of me, take care of my son. You just drink too much. Is there any way you can stop?" I said, "Yeah, I'll be able to stop. Don't worry about it. Let's go celebrate your birthday, and I'll stop tomorrow." Which is the great
I'll Quit Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
It's a great book by Vernon Johnson, by the way,
Right.
called I'll Quit Tomorrow.
So we did. We went to the club and we partied. I drank everything they had, and of course they had to drag me home. So the next morning, she says, I woke up at 9 o'clock in the morning, which I never do on a Sunday morning because I always wait till noon so I could buy a beer to kill the shakes. And she said, I came down and sat down next to her, and she asked me if I was okay, and I said, yeah, I guess. She said my head rolled back, my eyes rolled back, I started foaming from the mouth, and I had my first seizure. Eventually had 6 more. Ended up at that detox center on Grayson,
Oh, my
and
goodness.
then left there about 45 days afterwards.
These were alcohol related.
They're all alcohol related. It's all back. It's just all. There was there was so much blood in my blood system that I was thinning everything out. So the doctor said that I was lucky. He goes, one more seizure or the last one another minute, you would have been dead. But for some reason, you made it, and I'm here today to tell you how I made it. So I got through there, ended up at the Winners Club, and
Did not like that first year.
did not like the first year. These people kept coming, touching me. It's going to be okay, son. It's going to be like, can y'all just leave me alone? You know how the AA people are. So can you just leave me alone? But after a year of being miserable, I finally got
What
tired
was
of
the moment of clarity for
it.
you?
It is the dumbest thing you're ever going to hear. People talk about a white light and a burning bush. Mine was sitting in the back in what I call the half measure section where all the court people want to be. I'm sitting back there hating it, not wanting to do anything, and
The half measure
Right.
section. Oh, my God.
and then all of a sudden I had this idea, you know, if I can just have one beer, I'll be fine. I'll be okay. So I make this plan. I'm going to go out the back door of this club. I'm going to jump this 10-foot barbed wire fence into the apartments, go around the apartments, get on top of the dumpster, jump the other 10-foot barbed wire fence, go to the Valero, get a quart, go behind the dumpster and drink the quart, and then come back and jump that 10-foot barbed wire fence again, go around back and jump the other barbed wire fence, come back and sit down. Who's going to know? Who's going to know? And that's when my moment of clarity.
Wow.
Go stupid. Just go out the front door. Who cares? Who cares if I have one beer or not? And right there and then was when the first time I got honest with myself, said I could never ever have a beer, just one beer.
So then, what was the second year like for you, Jimmy?
Well, once I went from the half measure section to the front row, things started getting different. And my first sponsor, Mr. Pete Campola, came up to me. He says, "I'm going to be your sponsor." And I looked at him and said, I didn't ask you. He goes, I'm telling you, I'm going to be your sponsor. I'm tired of listening to you moaning and crying. I said, okay, whatever. So he goes, come back tomorrow, meet me tomorrow, and we'll start working on the steps. So I said, okay. At that time, I'm willing to do whatever you guys asked me to do. So I met him the next day. We got together, did the third step prayer, and then started working the steps as best as I could, you know. About my third year, Julie will be a testimony to this. About my third year, I get that blue cloud that everybody gets. You know, I want to be a counselor, I want to get married, and I want to lose weight. Well, two out of the three ain't bad, you know. I became a counselor and I got married. I never lost the weight. So. And then out of that marriage, it lasted for about 8 years. And Julie was talking about my daughter, who's 20 years old now. I've been a single father for the past 15 years and put her through high school and college. She's in college now and stuff like that, but only through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That same year, I started going to the gym. You know, so I'm gonna go to the gym and work out and stuff. Everybody wants to lose weight. So I'm walking around the track and I see some guys playing basketball. The doctor said I'd never be able to play ball again. So I walked around, came back, and there was nobody on the court, just the ball. And I just said, I'm going to shoot.
Wow.
I went in there and I shot basketball, and it hurt. It hurt. It hurt my legs, but I'm going to shoot. And a couple of days later, I'm walking around again, and I see this old gentleman playing racquetball. He's beating everybody at racquetball. He's kicking them all over the court. So I asked him to teach me how to play racquetball. He goes, sure, go get your stuff and whatever. So I went and bought some stuff, you know, and he started teaching me how to play racquetball. And in 1995, I started playing tournaments in racquetball. In 96, I got a racquetball sponsor. And then I started winning tournaments, started making money. And in 2000, I was ranked number one in the state of Texas and 22nd in the U.S. for men 45 and over at racquetball.
Wow.
So when I would go to the prisons,
What a gift of recovery.
exactly. When I would go to the prisons to do my service work, I would tell the gentlemen, don't ever limit the power of God. They told me I would never ever run again, and here I am, number one in the state of Texas and 22nd in the U.S. at men's racquetball. It's only by the grace of God that I can do that. You know, and today I continue to play racquetball. I've had to have knee surgery, and now the craziest sport here in Texas is pickleball.
Yeah.
So I started playing pickleball, and in October I'm going to Vegas for the Nationals at pickleball. You know.
Wow.
And I was playing
Jimmy.
pickleball when I retired. When I retired from the University Hospital, the last company I worked for, I started playing pickleball every day because of the pandemic. The gym
Right.
shut down, so we couldn't play racquetball. So somehow I ended up playing pickleball, and I've been playing pickleball ever since.
What does recovery mean to you?
Everything, everything. You know, I mean, it's a God gift to me. You know, they told me a long time ago, God gave you this gift. Are you going to open it? Or are you going to keep it closed? And by the grace of God, I opened it, and I've been able to live an amazing life. I'm one of those people that are happy at meetings nowadays. The ones I hated, that's me, because I'm grateful for everything I got. And if it wasn't for the grace of God and for me, the AA meetings, I don't think I would have made it.
Wow.
I don't think I would have made it.
It's quite a journey, and it keeps getting better.
It keeps getting better. Yeah, I was a single father for several years. Again, Julie met my daughter, knew my daughter before she was born, and was there for everything. And she's in college now. She's at A&M here in San Antonio. She's a senior now, and just started working for Meals on Wheels. I think she ended up getting the one to help people from where I do. You know, that's why I keep doing this, just to help people. Even though I was retired for a year, I was still sponsoring people. I was still taking people to detox. I was still taking people to Kerrville, you know, wherever they needed to go for treatment. So I was still doing it. So when they offered to pay me to do it, I said, might as well. So I'm back at it. So
Wow.
I'm back at Sakata. Yeah.
What do you say to the Jimmies out there who are now where you were back in the day?
Just a little bit of hope. If you got a little bit of hope in you that you can do this, you can. You know, yes, it's a hard journey. You know, my journey wasn't easy.
It's
You
a
know,
simple program, but not an easy
not
program.
an easy program, you know, and we complicate it, you know, because we know too much. We think we know too much. And if we knew that much, we wouldn't be here to begin with, you know. But for me, it's trusting in God and trusting in the program and that it's laid out for you. It's laid out for you. The road has already been paved for you. All you got to do is stay on it. And unfortunately, we get off of it and come back. We get off of it and come back. And today I'm a little hurt. I'm hurting a little bit because just 2 nights ago, one of our friends, she was 42 years old, just OD'd after 2 years of sobriety. I got the phone call that next morning, and it's heartbreaking.
That's tough.
And it just makes you realize that the disease is still out there. It's still alive, and it's still waiting for me. I can tell you one thing here right now. I think I have another drunk in me. I think I do. I don't think I have another recovery in me. It was too hard to forget, so I'm not giving it up for anything.
Yeah.
To be able to walk in a place like this and people know me by name, and I've been out of this for a while, and I'm walking and people coming up to me, how have you been? Haven't seen me. I just saw a friend of mine. She has a story. She came out of the Patricia movement, and now she is teaching at San Antonio College LCDC classes. And she had lost her kids to CPS, and I just saw her right now. We're just hugging, so it's amazing to see these people and to see what they've done for me.
The bright side of addiction is recovery.
It is recovery.
Absolutely.
And it's here. All you got to do, the hardest part for us is ask for help.
Yeah. And once you ask, and
'Cause
follow the directions. Stick with the winners.
I grew up in the west side of San Antonio. You don't give up for nothing. You don't give up for anything. You fight until you can't fight anymore. Well, 1993, I couldn't fight anymore. I had to give it to God. And he did, and he took it, and today I just keep doing it.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Sick and tired, and I won't lie to you, I had a good, crazy life, but when the addiction took over, it was time for me to do something about it, and sometimes God has to get our attention with a 2x4, and I ended up paralyzed for a couple of days to realize that, I can't do this,
It takes what it takes.
It takes what it takes for us to get here, and it takes that for us to stay here. My first sponsor always told me the 2 hardest years in your recovery is the first one and the one you're in.
Nice.
So it means we got to keep doing this every day, one day at a time. So
Jimmy, thank you so much for sharing
I appreciate
that story.
you letting me say my story. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I'm Neil Scott. The program is Recovery Coast to Coast. Actress Julie Harris will close out the podcast with some inspirational words about courage.
A great part of courage is the courage of having done the thing before. Ralph Waldo Emerson. One of the realities many of us must deal with in early recovery is our immaturity. Our social, emotional, and even intellectual development often slowed considerably or stopped when we began drinking or using drugs addictively. Some of us missed out on learning the skills that could later enable us to be comfortable and confident in demanding situations, such as job interviews. Others never had the opportunity to learn such basics as dating, making friends, or simply carrying on a conversation with another person. When we begin to recover and face the real world without our medicine, we are confronted with a variety of unfamiliar and often painful emotions and challenges. Even simple tasks are often difficult. Shopping for clothes, ordering food in restaurants, even going through supermarket checkout lines. Just because we temporarily lack certain skills or the experience necessary to develop them, that's no reason to feel ashamed, foolish, or less than. Invariably, we find that we can quickly acquire both the skills and the experience and can soon function in the world without limitation. What is more, as we become comfortable with ourselves and the world around us, we realize that we are not unique and need not face these challenges alone. Thought for today: addiction is progressive, but so is recovery.
Well, that wraps up edition 1515 of the national podcast, Recovery Coast to Coast. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of the program, and we'd love to hear from you. First of all, please hit the subscribe button or follow button. It's free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. Secondly, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. And third, feel free to write a review of the podcast. And lastly, kindly tell one or two of your friends about our podcast. That's really the way it works. That also helps us to carry the message. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And if you know someone who is experiencing problems with alcohol or any other drug, here's the 24-hour national helpline that offers free information and confidential treatment referrals. Spanish-speaking individuals are available on this hotline as well. The number is 1-800-622-HELP or 1-800-622-4357. And another shout out to our sponsoring organization, Sundown M Ranch, successfully treating individuals, including adolescents and their families, for well over 50 years. Sundown.org. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, and be kind to one another. Remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.